there is no way to evaluate changes in space geometry directly. This is normally done with the aid of light. That is, you know that space is curved because light bends. The impression that remains is that the space would have merged with the light, forming a single whole. What happened to one of them would be reflected in the other. However, light would only be the messenger of space. This would explain why space takes time, or needs time to communicate a distant event, such as a shining star. If Beta Andromeda stopped shining right now, we wouldn't know about it until 75 years later. If light decided to lie, or if it were misinterpreted, our assessment of space would be in trouble. Although this can be questioned, it can be suggested that the universe was stationary in its origin. To be perceived by us, however, it would have to have entered into continuous movement, since our memory, as well as movement itself, depends on time. Therefore, the hypothetical stationary state of the universe, even existing, would be excluded in the translation process if space were described indirectly by light. By excluding the direct record of its state of rest, the same space could present two virtually continuous movements, with opposite and mutually exclusive movements. That is, with two phases coexisting simultaneously, without one being aware of the other. Think of space as a rubber band. As long as you stretch this rubber band, you exclude the phase where it can relax. The relaxation phase would happen when you let go of the rubber band, leaving it free to contract. At the moment in which we live, the space that shelters distant galaxies could be either in its stretching phase or in its contraction phase, but the two mentioned phases could not be confronted. Why do physicists usually attribute this behavior of an elastic band to space as well? It is evident that this would result from the apparent fusion between the behavior of space and that of light itself. The messenger of correspondence would be confused with its sender. This happens because light performs a movement called simple harmonic, which is composed of two phases, one of stretching and another of contraction. Despite the importance of the resting phase, when the elastic band of space would be neither stretched nor contracted, this third phase is not normally taken into account. Physics tells us that the rubber band of space would be at rest at infinity. In the rest phase of space, there would be no forces acting directly, and the universe would be static. It's just that, in space-time, or in the observable universe, movement is relative and continuous, and is conditioned to time. The universe may be static in its origins, but it could only be thought of and remembered as long as it was in continuous motion. Our memory, as we know it, could not function in a static and timeless universe. The inflationary or stretching phase of space would not have left any traces in space-time. It's as if it had acted in its own time as a huge information eraser. The The exclusion observed between the expansion and contraction phases could be explained by the behavior of the space messenger as it retains information in the first phase of the harmonic movement of light, the stretching phase. The two phases would be definitively separated from each other by the existence of a phase of rest in space, in which time could not be measured. This virtual separation, managed by continuous movement, depends, therefore, on the presence of a conscious observer who can decode the information carried by the space messenger. For this, he needs measurable time. In the case of the Sun, it would take 8 minutes to see the star through its image. When that happened, the real Sun would already be in an uncertain position in space. Note that we are not saying that information did not exist in the space stretching phase. Just that, even though they were there, they couldn't be accessed directly. If the observer could only access data about the behavior of space after the scattering of light on Earth, the scattered waves would have to appear as if they were continuous. It is because, in this case, our consciousness would depend on direct access to the only phase that appears to be the real one, that of the contraction of space. It is light, not space, that allows us to see the stars instantaneously, regardless of the distances that light would have previously traveled. I ask, how could you accept, without questioning, if someone told you that your consciousness would act discontinuously, like light? This is science fiction stuff. Since the stretching phase of the rubber band, attributed to both light and space, would transiently retain light and time, we would have no way of directly measuring the extent of the universe's expansionary phase. This would have to be done indirectly, taking advantage of the presence of light after its scattering. It turns out that to have its presence noticed, the scattered light would have ceased to be two-dimensional and timeless, undergoing a process known as quantization, or packing. This would involve the observer, whose memory would be structured on, at least, 3 dimensions. The 2 of space, plus time. As can be seen, time would become a kind of intrinsic movement. That is, it would be contained in the observer himself, by excluding direct access to time in the future, or to the time that the light of any star had used to move previously in space. Interestingly, the packing phase of light, or quantization, does not require time, so it coincides with the retention of information in the first stretching phase of harmonic movement, attributed to space by light. The impossibility of directly accessing the events that would occur in our future would have another consequence. The zero mark of time would definitively migrate from the position of the stars to our position on Earth.